Hello and welcome to the G3 Pulse podcast. Today we have a very topical session discussing the issue of the hour, the postponement of Ice London to the new show dates in April. And we have with us Alex Pratt, the Group Managing Director of Clarion Gaming, and Stuart Hunter, the Managing Director of Clarion Gaming. Welcome to you both.
Hi, Nat.
Hi. Again, this is, I'm not going to underplay how big a huge an issue this is and the interest in this topic. So I'd like to start by taking things back to the original announcement of the postponement. And I'm wondering, how difficult was it to make that decision? What were you having to negotiate in the gap between mid-December and January when you made the kind of announcement of the postponement and the new dates? And what were the options and variables on the table that you're having to wrestle with?
Hi, Lewis. Good to see you. Look, I think it was difficult in many respects. I guess because prior to Omicron coming through, probably that late November period, ICE had never looked in such good shape in terms of its level of commitment. The show was kind of at capacity in terms of exhibitor support. Sure. Registration was over about 10% up in advance. All the kind of features and investment that we've been gearing up to the show were coming to fruition. We were at that nice stage of show delivery, really, with all the kind of glossy bits coming through. So everything was pinpointing for it to be a huge return, really, which obviously it still is. But we've had to kind of, between that period and now, we've had to kind of traverse through what we all knew there was a risk of, which was a kind of decline in the COVID situation. So I guess during those first few weeks, when the conditions in the UK started to kind of decline in many respects, obviously we speak to our customers on a weekly, if not daily basis. And you could tell that the nervousness was starting to kind of come into that conversation. Certainly from our bigger clients, in terms of the wider conversation groups and the association meetings, there was certainly this increase of nervousness, really. And I think all the way through it, running live exhibitions, bringing people back together is built on confidence. And that confidence had started to kind of deplete. So really kind of just getting close to our customers again during that sort of week, 7-day, 10-day period of just really understanding their concerns, clearly observing what the current conditions were in the UK. Obviously, with the new travel restrictions that were positioned by the government, everything pointed to us literally probably being in a situation where we probably had 6 weeks of kind of a backward step, I would say, before we could move forward again. And with the timing of ICE being in February, we knew we just couldn't accommodate that. So, it was the right thing to do to make that postponement. It was a difficult decision in that respect, but an easy one based on the evidence that we had at the time. Okay. So I guess then really where was the next step? For us to move a show the size and scale of ICE is obviously a huge challenge. It occupies the entirety of Excel. It's one of the few major trade shows that takes over the entirety of the campus with our co-located IGB affiliate show. Yep. So picking up an event of that size and scale is, I've got to be honest with you, largely impossible. We made it possible by working with Excel, really, in terms of utilizing their kind of their experience and their relationship with a lot of other organizers that have space. So it's interesting, really, compared to last year. Excel and the UK exhibition industry has seen a huge bounce back in live, and that return to face-to-face has been everything we kind of hoped it would be, I should say, in that respect. So with Excel being at capacity, we had very little options to consider, very, very few windows, I should say. So really the only period that we had where there was at least a chance of securing, I think we started out in and around about 60% of the venue space we needed. And that was around that April period, that Easter period, really. So we had two choices. One was the week post-Easter and 1 week preceding Easter, which is where we've landed now. Okay. The week after Easter, strangely, was operationally probably a little bit easier for us to work with at that time. But we were totally cognizant that the Indian Gaming Trade Show Expo was that week in the US. A lot of our clients, about 25 to 30 of our clients, also do that show. So for us, that was the worst case of the two dates. So we tried to work with the dates that we've got now. The issue with that is that we had about 6 other organisers in the same space. So we really needed the support of Excel to work with those other organisers and kindly encourage them to relocate. Being smaller shows, it was a little bit easier for them to do that. That's what took that time, really, from when we did the announcement in December right through to that confirmation of dates in January. The 2 weeks over Christmas, we were working constantly, and it wasn't just us, it was Excel, the venue, it was the other organisers, to reach that point where we knew we could deliver ice, or at least a large proportion of ice operationally as well as the on-site experience. So we managed to do that. But we did also recognise that the new dates that we've got were not going to be totally ideal with the proximity to Easter. But actually, outside of that, there were no other options. So we had to plough on and make the best of it. So it's been a challenging few weeks, and obviously we've had great support from the industry to push forward with that. But the challenge was a very, very real one. It's not something we want to have to do again if we can help it.
Yeah, and how big how big a hurdle is Easter? I mean, the whole point of the discussions are going about. But were you cognizant of Easter being really a date that was going to cause problems for you?
I think it's like we said to all of our clients. If we had a choice of running ice in different date lines, if there was other availability, then we would have definitely considered that. Running an ice event during a holiday period is obviously not ideal. But after conversation with a lot of our exhibitor group and obviously conversing with our attendee group, I think obviously we've landed in the position where we've totally got an opportunity to realise a successful ice. So we totally recognise that it's not ideal, it's not going to work for everybody, but we're thankful that the vast majority are very supportive of these new dates. I think there's been two challenges. One has been the operational delivery, with exhibitors having to break down over a bank holiday period. So we're working with all of our exhibitors to increase our breakdown periods, to work with different suppliers, just to kind of express that breakdown period. So hopefully a lot of our contractors and suppliers can get out early. That's something we're working with. And I'm sure we'll touch on it a little bit later, that the assumption, I guess, that because it's near a holiday period, that'll affect the attendance, which we're pleased to say that so far so good on that. But we'll touch on some of those details later, I'm sure. But it is a challenge, but it's something that for sure we are working with and we can make the best of.
Okay. The date changed to obviously April 12 to 14. That came as a plan B after you said you had the availability with Excel to do that and postpone it. I think some of the worry that's out there, some of the kind of I suppose intrigue that's out there at the moment is whether there is a plan C in the back pocket, and whether new dates, these dates have met such resistance as it does clash with Easter. Is there an alternative actually on the cards at all?
I think, Lewis, where that stemmed from was last year, when obviously we were in a position where we were planning to run the event in the original February period. Obviously, at that stage, if I recall correctly, live events were still illegal in the UK and most of Europe. So it was quite an obvious thing for us to postpone that. I think at that point, there are a lot of event organisers that are either moving their events a little bit later towards the autumn period, or cancelling their events from 2020 altogether. So we had more availability. So we were able at that point to look at alternate date lines. And I think we certainly were looking at a June date line last year. So I think that's what created the assumption that we had a bit of a pick and mix option for dates for ice. But as I said at the beginning, because the UK has bounced back so strongly in face-to-face, and just important to add that live events have been running all the way through this COVID period very successfully. Yeah. So the UK is in a strong position, but ice is obviously a truly international show. So we're very cognizant that it's the travel into the UK that was going to be a big factor. So hence the postponement. But we haven't had that opportunity this year. Really these April dates are our only opportunity to run ice this year. Obviously, the majority of the industry tell us they want it. They need it. It's been 2 long years since we gathered together. So this is our opportunity. If we hadn't have secured these dates, then we wouldn't have had an ice in 2022. Unfortunately, it is as stark as that. So whilst we totally sympathise that there are challenges around there, we're also excited that we have got this opportunity to see ice return, which will be for the industry. So all things considered, and the COVID issues we've had over the last few months, I think we are pleased that we've got a chance here to bring the industry back together.
Okay. I mean, Alex, we had a chat last year. We had an interview in which you were talking about the room on the calendar, and there were pressures to actually move the show obviously to Europe. Are these the dates? Are these the only dates that were available at Excel, or are these the dates that were only available externally, looking at all the actual options around that as well?
Do you want me to take that, Stu, or?
No, you go for it.
Yeah, no, I think there's 3 things that, and we've had this conversation. Obviously, I had it with you last year in terms of the bigger question about ice being in London or Europe, and then for this current Apple Watch for this current year, moving it to a European location. I think there's three factors. One was availability, and I think we're seeing the same thing happening in Europe as it is in the UK.
Okay.
A lot of those events are pushed back in, but not into 23, into those sort of spring through to autumn and winter months. So availability is really hard. And then in terms of when you do find availability, it's the ability to move ice into a new venue with the footprint that it has. So there is no alternative that would take the ice that we know, and it would mean either losing exhibitors or exhibitors having to scale not just a small amount but quite a significant amount for that to happen.
Okay.
So yeah, it would be not impossible, but it would be a dramatically different show, and I think deliver an experience that people wouldn't actually want or enjoy at the end.
Okay, so I mean, to be crystal clear, and I apologize for labouring the point, but if ICE doesn't take place on the dates you've announced, April 12th to 14th, does this mean a cancellation into 2023?
Well, it's clever how you word the question. So it is happening in April. If we hadn't have secured the April dates, if literally we couldn't have made it work operationally and asked those 6 other organisers to move, and we had no other way of finding another date, then yeah, for sure it would be cancelled. So there isn't an alternative to April. We are committed to April. We've got vast majority of the support for April. So ICE is totally committed to April. Like I said, if we hadn't have secured April, then it wouldn't have happened this year. So it's one of those things where it's there's some position that it's not entirely ideal being close to Easter, and we respect that. But it's now the time to focus towards actually maximising the experience and bringing everyone together. So you're totally right. It was April or 2023 really were the 2 alternatives.
Yeah, I think there are exhibitors who are sitting on the fence because there is a hope that there might be a plan C, there might be a postponement, there might be an opportunity for it to be further down the line, and they would take that option as opposed to maybe deciding, okay, well, if there isn't another option, then we will commit to April as well. So I just want to make sure that there isn't another option and everything else is off the table this year if it isn't April.
And to be honest, we're getting those messages almost daily. As can it not be in June? Can it not be in August? Can it, etc., etc. And it's just a constant reminder that unfortunately, it's April or 23.
Okay.
And 2023 is a long time away.
It is, yeah, and to have 3 years without the show pretty much as well. But I mean, in terms of the going back to a little bit about the controversy over obviously ICE being in London and with Brexit, has this also kind of raised the question, the discussion about Europe and where the show goes next? I mean, it seemed as though we put a lid on it last year when you were discussing it, and now the postponement and the delay has that re-emerged? Has that come back as well as an issue to take the show somewhere else?
I think less so around this time. I think the debate or the discussion has never really gone totally away. Right. And I think in a way that's good, that we should always be asking, are we doing the right thing, whether it's location, venue, the way we structure the exhibition, the days, whatever it may be. I think we always need to be questioning that and making sure that whatever we're delivering is right for the market. And I think a few months ago we said we'd obviously done a lot of work with the attendees and the buyers and the operators in the market, and when we reached out to them, a big majority, 90% of those guys wanted it in London for a number of different reasons. But we'd also worked with our kind of top 50 exhibitor base, but we wanted to extend that further. So I think we said during ICE this year, as well as post-ICE, we're going to use Explory again to do some qualitative and quantitative survey with the exhibitor base. And that's because we still haven't run an event in a Brexit environment. So there's all sorts of, theories of it will impact, it won't impact, it's going to add this cost, it's not going to add that cost. And I think what we need to do is run ICE in an environment where Brexit's in place, because that's the biggest objection at the moment.
Okay.
And then get that feedback. And look, if the market says, do you know what, it's really difficult, then we will look to move it, no matter whether we've got contracts with venues or it's going to affect us financially. At the end of the day, we have to deliver what the market wants.
Okay. I mean, obviously, the cost to exhibit at ICE is significant, and if there's any doubt that the right people won't attend, whether it be due to COVID, travel restrictions, childcare, Easter, whatever, it's a cost that some of the suppliers after the 2 years that we've been through can't afford right now. How do you kind of quell that level of anxiety?
I mean, for me, I'm happy to answer this, but for me, it's all about trying to back that up with data. I think there's a lot of kind of anecdotal conversations talking about whether people are going to be at ICE, whether it's going to have the right people, and what's it going to look like, what's it going to feel like. And I think all we can do is use data and use our partners to find out what the most likely scenario is going to be. So before as Stu mentioned earlier, before Omicron came in, we were heading towards what I thought was going to be like an incredibly exciting edition of ICE, not just in terms of quantity. And actually, the interesting thing I've had when I've spoken to customers is that a big change has been whether you have 30,000, 40,000, 50,000. The number isn't as important as it used to be. It's much more about actually, I really need the right decision makers there. And when we were heading into ICE, we really were attracting not only the decision makers, but a ton of new people that had not been to ICE before. In the last 2 years, I think there's been a huge amount of innovation and startups that are looking to register and looking to kind of meet customers which they haven't had the opportunity for. Okay. So we had a lot of that data heading into ICE. Now, as we come into April, we need to almost relook at that. So we're surveying all our pre-registered attendees. Okay. Really simple questions. Are you still coming to the show? Are you intending on coming? Are you probably, if you're not intending on coming, or are you on the fence? What are you? What's the reason for that? We're talking to the 2020 attendants, and then we've also partnered with the likes of the ECA. Have sent out a survey to their audience, to their members yesterday. Okay. Again, asking if anything you're attending. And look, we sent out yesterday. It's probably the first thing I did this morning after doing Wordle was to log into Explorer and have a look at that data. And we've got about just over 800 responses, and it's really, really positive. It's 78% of our pre-registration are saying that they will be definitely / probably attending ICE in April. I think a further 11% was maybe attending. So there's a really small amount that are saying definitely not attending or possibly not attending. And of those, about a third of them were because of COVID-related travel restrictions and
as opposed to the Easter days.
So yeah, look, another third were personal reasons. We can't do anything if they've got personal booking, and as you say, it's Easter. They've got holidays. They might have childcare. Who knows what it is? And unfortunately, we can't do anything about that. What we are seeing in the UK that we're not seeing in other countries yet, and I think it's soon to follow, is a very fast relaxation in those COVID measures. And I mean, it's very fresh at the moment. I think by the time we get to April, it will be. If we listen to Boris, it's looking like we might not even have isolation by then. So I'm hoping even those people that are on the fence, actually they'll come straight off it if it's around that kind of travel restriction or COVID safety. So yeah, for me to help people justify and make that decision around that investment, it's the buyers are coming, and if the buyers are coming and they're telling us not only that they're coming, they're telling us what they want to buy, then that they're coming to buy products, then hopefully that's enough to give people enough security to make that investment.
Okay. In terms of the, there's been a lot of kind of high-profile objectors that we've seen and we've heard in the background in terms of the support for the show in April. But who are the ones that are really kind of throwing the weight behind the show at the moment? You mentioned the ECA though in terms of attendees. I'm thinking of exhibitors. Who are the people that have now kind of confirmed and said, I'm going to be actually attending the show?
Well, I think in many respects, actually, like I said at the beginning, it's been the vast majority. I think we've got over 95% of an exhibitor support rate, and that's climbing still because, as you've both intimated, there's a few people that have still wanted to digest the figures that we've been working on over the last couple of days. So that will help, I think, improve that confidence. But the show is still sitting around that 95% in terms of retention of exhibitor, which just goes to show really that despite the challenges, there is that support and there is that need to meet face to face. And I think that statistic, in line with the ones that Alex has just run through from the buyer base, in addition to the support that we've got from the wider industry, our associations, our ambassadors, the wider stakeholder community, it's all very, very supportive. There is, there is a want for ICE to happen, and in many respects, there's a need for ICE to happen. So we totally recognise that there are challenges, and some of our exhibitor base won't be able to work through those operationally, perhaps because they're too big, they send too many people, the breakdown period is too long, they can't break down over the Easter period. There is the event in the US the following weeks. Everyone's got slightly different reasons. Okay. So I would say, there's probably about 10 to 15 or so companies, but they tend to be the sort of slightly larger companies that are sitting in the land-based sector in many respects. So we understand that because there's more machinery that needs to be brought in. So there's lots of sensitivities, but we're working with everyone, client by client, and trying to solve some of those operational issues. I'm pleased to say we have achieved that for some, but others, I guess the challenge will be too much. So, we respect that decision, but, going forward, I think, like I said, we're over 95% of the exhibitors retained going forward. So that's a strong indictment that everyone is focused on getting ICE over the line in April.
And I think the other thing to recognise is that, and it's probably fresh in most people's minds because it was across all of the media, something like CES, where you had this huge tranche of tier ones state they're not coming to the show, and obviously it completely changed the dynamic of the show. Yeah. What I guess there's two things. One is we're not seeing that gigantic group of tier one saying, right, we're not coming. But I think the other big part is we're not coming to the show. So those exhibitors that actually, because of whatever it may be, can't exhibit, they're not sending people. Okay. So then we're talking to them, actually, how do we create meeting rooms? How do we create sponsorship, and still to try and give them that reach into the market or give them a presence at the show? Because actually that need to meet with their current customers, but also new customers, is still there. So it's not that they've gone, do you know what, I'm not coming at all, and I'll see you in 18 months. We still have that, I guess, that level of commitment from that aspect.
Yeah, there are some of those brands that have a slightly bigger presence, but also have brother sister businesses that are still in the same organisation, of which they are obviously operationally less of a challenge to implement over that Easter period, and they're staying in ICE. So it is, as Alex suggested, all these companies are trying to find a way to retain their presence at ICE. But for some, because of the level of investment we see at ICE, which I guess is a big part of why it's been successful and why the satisfaction levels are so high, because of the level of investment from our exhibitor group, it's sort of unrivaled in that respect. So, there is huge amount of money that goes into that, and logistically months of planning and hundreds of staff members per exhibitor. So that it has created challenges, but like Alex said, I think we are working with them to try and ensure that they have some element of a nice experience, if it's not quite how it has been historically for this year.
Yeah, and I think I mean I suppose the biggest level of anxiety is how do you ensure that ICE 2022 isn't a small, compromised, ill-attended event? I mean, those are the things that are keeping people on any kind of fence at the moment. So, I mean, what are you working on to ensure that gets over the line?
Yeah, well, I think as we said, we will obviously look at all of those data points, because from our perspective, clearly we have there is nothing to be gained about delivering an event as you just described. We want ICE to be the best version of itself, or a very close to the best version of itself, considering the conditions that we're all going through. So obviously we would have analysed that support quite early on. We're doing that currently. Have we got the exhibitor support? As importantly, if perhaps not more importantly, have we got the buyer support? Because Alex said, if the buyers are coming, then the suppliers will certainly be there. So so far so good on all of those metrics. So we're looking at that clearly in terms of, okay, have we got that support? Have we got that energy and momentum? That's what we had back in November. The momentum was huge, only to be stalled by a new variant. But now we're reclaiming that momentum and we're pushing forward. So, whilst we're talking a lot about the new dates and we're talking a lot about the challenges around that and the postponement, etc., and the COVID conditions, we've spent the last 12 months thinking about actually all component parts of ICE. How can we improve, develop, the level of investment that we've put into ICE, new propositions, new digital propositions which enhance the ice experience. There's a huge amount of evolution the ice brand's gone through, and I guess having the event in April is giving us that opportunity to show the industry what we've been doing with all our time, where we've been spending our money, where we've been kind of listening to their wants and needs, and kind of developing the products and services that we offer both buyers and sellers at ICE to elevate that experience. So really, there's a huge amount of that is still ongoing, and it still will be delivered at ICE. So if ICE is slightly smaller on space, that may well be likely, but marginally, I think. Okay. But where we have had some cancellations, we've had new customers that have been wanting to acquire space in ICE for some time. So we are balancing that out in terms of the actual space of the show. So I don't believe it'll be too dissimilar to a normal ICE experience in terms of size and scale. The data, as Alex said, suggests so far that the buyers are supporting it. Our level of investment of the experience and the new initiatives we put in there in terms of hosted buying programs, in terms of our news media experience through ICE 365, etc. There is a huge amount that's going on in and around the background, and we just want to get to that point now where we can show the world and really not only remind people what they've been missing, but elevate that experience. It's almost resetting the bar, because we found that with our IGB Live event in Amsterdam, which ran back in September, October time, where that had gone on a similar evolution. Obviously, it's a smaller event versus compared to ICE. But the feedback that we've had from that show and the investment and the benefit of being back face to face, the satisfaction on both buyer and seller has been the highest, not only that we've seen within the gaming portfolio, but the highest level that the independent authority that runs the promoting score has seen since they've launched their business too. So it's clearly something in the fact that we all want to get back together, but we're not resting on our laurels and just creating a space for people to get back together. We're enhancing that space. We're enhancing that experience. So that really is, everything in our power and our evidence suggests that actually we are moving towards delivering a very, very exciting ICE experience. So whether it's slightly smaller or not, either way, I think we are building towards something that's going to really benefit both all parts of the industry.
Okay. I guess one of the other kind of other big questions is whether the show will go ahead if you do lose a large amount of support, particularly from the influence of the land-based sector at the moment, who are the ones who the majority seem to be the ones who are on the fence at the moment. Is the show now committed to going ahead regardless of pullouts or withdrawals or big announcements that are made? Is the show kind of going to carry on regardless of those kind of events taking place and announcements being made?
I'll go for this one. It's a similar question. If you might remember back in December when I was doing the AGM presentation, someone on the call mentioned, don't listen to Clarion. Like they're an events organizer. Whatever happens, the show must go on. They've got to deliver this event. They'll keep telling you the numbers that happen. Blah blah blah. Insert whatever you want. And to be honest, I get why people think that. Okay. And I think the big difference between Clarion and certainly, I guess, the direction that we have is because we're backed by private equity, but also backed by private equity that believes in the value that we deliver. We don't have to deliver a number at the end of the day. We can skip a year, and if it means that we make a loss or whatever it may be, they believe in the long-term investment that they have. And in fact, we were talking about this just this week about ICE and what would happen if we lost the support or the market didn't want us to run it. And actually, we haven't run an event within the whole of Clarion that the market hasn't had support for. And at times where we have run an event that the market wanted us to run, even though it's smaller, it would have been better for us to cancel. We've run it anyway because that's what the market wanted. And it's paid dividends for us. It means that in the long term, we're a partner to the sector rather than simply a supplier. So going back to that question, I would say, if we do not have support from the market, we will change. We will not run it. For me, if the buyer, and it comes down to that need by the buyer, and I looked at some data the other day on European land-based operators and the amount of time they've been open in 2021, and it is, and look, but until you see it in black and white and see the amount of days they've been closed, and even now the ones that are open, the restrictions that they have to run their business, that we have been through not just in 2020, but 2021 as well, and continuing to 2022, a really hard time. Yeah. And in all that time, we've had no opportunity to come face to face, whether it's to talk about the experience that we've had and just share, or actually to talk about how do we bring our industry and our business back to life and start and kick off that growth, and what software do we need and what games or what technology. And for me right now, I guess the feedback we're getting from the market is ICE is part of that process. It's going to be that opportunity to bring the market together, to talk about those things, to celebrate coming back together. And I guess that we have a strap line, together never felt so good. And to me, that isn't just a strap line. That really is the feeling we'll feel when we come to that. And as long as the industry keeps telling us that's what they want and that's what they need, then I think we'll continue to focus on delivering the event. And if it's hard for those exhibitors to exhibit, whether from land-based or online, we'll find ways to help them either get over those objections, if it's logistical or whatever it may be, or if they can't do that, find ways in which they can still have a presence at the show or be able to meet with their customers at the show. Because I think it's just really important that we are a part of this industry and we're here to support it, especially at this time, rather than thinking about, look, let's just run it, pocket the money, and move on to 2023.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, ICE is this big melting pot of everybody in the gaming industry, from online and sports betting to land-based. Is it kind of fair for one sector to be saying, okay, well, we if we pull out, then the show should be cancelled? I mean, is it getting tricky to hold everybody together into that kind of big melting pot that has been ICE, and continue to actually put the show on for everybody?
It's really difficult. Right, it was really difficult before Omicron. I think, look, and we spoke, maybe I can't remember now, 9 months ago, 10 months ago, and I've got a big background in the online industry, and not so much of a background in the land-based sector. I've spent the last 9-10 months trying to understand the land-based sector as much as possible, meeting the people in it and the nuances, because I think a big fear from the market was, and it wasn't just a fear, it almost escaped into rumours and fact at one point, is that suddenly ICE was going to become this, it was all about iGaming and sports betting, land-based, who cares? And you know what, I almost wanted to take that challenge, and Stuart as well, and we've talked about it, and we have all sorts of data points now looking at actually what's the square metre for land-based, what's the square metre for online, where are the attendees coming from here, and we've tried to create deeper partnerships with segments where we maybe weren't servicing it enough. So something like the street market. Do you know what? We weren't spending enough time as a brand to invest in getting those people to the show. So and it hasn't been announced yet, but we've signed a really a much bigger and more in-depth partnership with the likes of Euromat to try and help make that happen. So yeah, look, it's a really hard balance. But I think as long as we're conscious of that, then I think it will never be perfect. It will always be a bit of up and down, but I think, we've just got to be conscious and really focused on making sure that not one side becomes heavy on the other, because neither will benefit then.
Okay. I don't mean to get into the kind of some of the minutiae of the kind of contracty things that you're talking about, but having polled some of the suppliers at the start of this week, just before this call, one of the questions that was being asked by all of them if they don't actually exhibit at this show this year, for whatever, all the reasons that we just mentioned, what happens to the stand space? What happens to the slot for 2023?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. It's very relevant because we appreciate the investment, I guess, in terms of ICE, but also the operational one. So there's lots of costs to consider. So, we have always, and we always will, work with our clients, client by client. And I've been joining a lot of the calls with some of the challenges that, our exhibitor base have had. So we will obviously do what's right by them. And there is a real mixture. There is some customers that actually say, well, do you know what? Actually, I'm happy to retain some investment in ICE because I can get something different. And Alex touched on it before, meeting room space or some level of sponsorship, which is fine. There are some customers that are very active around our other event portfolios, either the affiliate event in London, migration, some upsizing in space there, or in IGB Live in Amsterdam. but also our suite of media and digital. So there are customers that are using their money across those elements. Obviously, if we have had customers that have opted to move everything towards next year, then we've worked with them to do that.
Okay.
It's always our number one priority to do what's best for the customer. Obviously, we have to reach a point now where we say, right, okay, we've had a conversation with everyone. Everyone's made their decision on April. Now we've got to move forward. We can't, we can offer complete flexibility, but there's a point where everyone, even ourselves, really starts to incur those costs. And I'll give you one example. We've already started rigging at Excel, even 3 months out, in terms of setting up rigging points for the major exhibitors to kind of start to rig their products. So even our parties and contractors start incurring costs. So we've had a decent window now where we've spoke to our exhibitor base and really understood their challenges, worked with through all of those. But almost now, sort of moving forward, it's really kind of just get ourselves locked in going forward to next year. But those who have wanted it, I can't. I think we struggle to find a client that hasn't been satisfied with the solution we put on the table for them in terms of how we work with their investment or their space for future years.
Okay. I mean, this is I guess a hypothetical, but one of the other topics of conversation that was talking about is really what happens to ICE if we don't have a show this year. Is the brand diminished having not run for 3 years? How important do you feel it is to actually make sure that we have a show in 2022?
Well, we listen to the market first, and they're telling us, the vast majority are telling us that they think it's crucial for it to happen.
Okay.
As Alex said before, that really is what drives our motivation. If the industry wants it, then we put it on. If the industry had told us wholeheartedly that they didn't want it, then we wouldn't put it on. There isn't that commercial pressure for us to run through an event. I guess there's that, the excitement of actually seeing the industry back together, and we had a glimpse of that at our event in Amsterdam, and it was palpable, really, the experience that people had of being back in the room together. So obviously, each event that we work on for ICE is its own individual experience in many respects. It is a brand that's got long heritage and long history. And if it didn't run this year, I think it would pick up its energy and momentum and be even bigger and better in 23. I don't think it carries any major disadvantage. I think the disadvantage would be more so for that long tail of exhibitor base. As I said at the beginning, there's over 500 exhibitors at ICE, and I know we know that there is a smaller number that occupy quite a lot of space in that respect. But actually, there is a long tail of small businesses, medium-sized businesses that need ICE to happen. They need that connection. They need the buyer meet seller sort of mentality. So that would be the disadvantage, really, in terms of the impact on their businesses rather than the ICE brand, I think. And that's why we just think it's really important to forge on. And if there has been a few bigger brands that aren't there this year, we do need to do it for the bigger majority and the bigger part of the industry. So I think that's where the pain would be. I think if we didn't run ICE this year, we would pick up all the energy and effort that we've been focusing on for this show and add another 10 to 20% into next year with the time going forward, really. So that's our opinion. I'm sure there'll be plenty of your listeners and readers that will have their own, but I think that's kind of where we're positioned on it, really.
Yeah, it was really just listening to what the concerns was the point of this podcast. And obviously, what they're saying is that the travel to London and accommodation is undoubtedly going to increase over the holiday period. Stand breakdown will take place over the Good Friday and Easter weekend. There's costs incurred in there, and you've also got exhibitors and visitors, seeking to mitigate these extra costs. Is there any kind of help and support? Is there anything that Clarion can do to actually ease some of that burden that's going to be added just because the dates are in Easter?
Yeah, well, I think if you look at the two sectors again around the attendee or the buyer and then the exhibitor part. So I'll start with the exhibitor. Obviously, we acknowledge that breaking down over the Easter period isn't the ideal scenario, and I think everyone recognises that. So what we've been trying to do is look at some ways that we can reduce that period. So, for example, we don't historically allow much breakdown on the Thursday evening of ICE, but we are now including that in, and we're extending the breakdown period. So there's almost sort of six, maybe even 7 hours of breakdown in that evening.
Okay.
We're opening up the breakdown period earlier on the Friday. So as much as we can do to allow the exhibitor base to break out as quickly as possible, to avoid. I think really the only costs really around that Easter break, which is kind of what we're hearing from our exhibitors, is around the manpower, the cost of running staff over a bank holiday or a weekend period. So that obviously, there is going to be some cost implication, but we hope that it's not too much. We hope that it's certainly worthwhile everyone's investment. But where we can, we're trying to reduce that or help our exhibitors to reduce that by changing our breakdown period. We're offering different supplier solutions and just really kind of looking to everyone's concerns and trying to create those solutions. So that's been our focus, I guess, over the last week to 10 days. And like I said, we've made some gains with that. Even in some respects, if there are exhibitors that don't want to break down over that Easter period, we can keep their stand intact until the following week. We have that availability still, so we can be as flexible as that, really. So there's not every solution is not ideal for each individual customer, but we are working with everyone to maximise that. I think from an attendee perspective, I certainly from a hotel perspective, the hotel companies that we recommend, as far as I'm seeing and hearing and understanding, and what we're speaking to them at the moment, there shouldn't be any increase there. In terms of flight costs and things, I guess we've only got anecdotal feedback at the moment from some customers that have told us they've been able to move their flights quite easily. So I think it's a very dynamic conditions at the moment to travel anyhow. So I'm sure in some respects there may well be some cost increases, there may be some cost decreases on that, but we're cognizant of that. Obviously, we are investing everything to ICE to make sure that any of those issues and concerns make it certainly worthwhile their experience. But I think certainly in terms of their arrival to ICE from an attendee perspective, obviously it runs Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and like we said, giving the buyer base at least 2 to 3 days to be at ICE and then able to fly home on a Thursday and be home for that entire Easter break, I think still gives us that confidence that will work through. So yeah, there are lots of challenges, but we are helping out where we can for sure.
Okay. Alex, you mentioned before about the surveys that you're doing, and the kind of listening to the industry is one of the kind of major things that was brought up in a lot of the kind of calls before this, and about at AGM as well, in that meeting, that you are still listening to the industry and not taking decisions regardless. What can still be influenced in terms of the fundamentals of the ICE show? Are you still prepared to make kind of changes? I know we've got a short amount of time now before April. Are you still taking that, taking the surveys, taking the polls, listening to what's actually happening, and making alterations to ICE to kind of continue to make it better, but also to make sure it happens for the April the dates that you've got?
Yeah, no, and definitely, and that ability to listen, but also then act off that information, I think is key. And you mentioned that we went over to the AGM meeting in December, but also actually just meeting with customers, both operators and suppliers. Just look, it's a small group of people. I met them, but that really helps to then influence not just ICE, but what we do as a business. I guess in terms of ICE, yeah, constantly, and we've in the last kind of 18 months, a big investment we've made is around our kind of data and analytics. And as we're leading towards ICE, there was some incredibly interesting, I guess, trends and segments we're seeing around the objectives of a operator in a business over 1,000 employees was different from and the objectives of an operator in, I guess, in the kind of SME end of the market, and actually then starting to think, how do we adjust the show experience for those individuals? So it's more, I'd say, yeah, we are constantly thinking about how do we, and even though it's a huge, large-scale event, how do we actually try and deliver something a bit more personal, or something that people want? And even now, like the survey we've sent out today or yesterday around, are you still intending on coming to April? I really can't wait to get into that data and see, well, actually, the people that have said definitely, well, who are they? Where they're coming from? Is it a certain geography? Is it a certain type of customer? And the same with the people that are saying no. And then what can we do to either deliver a different event for those people or whatever it may be? And then on the other half is the big thing we're trying to move towards now is, rather than just tell us you're coming, what are you coming here to buy? What are you coming here to achieve? Is it new slots? And if it's new slots, and then if we can get into that a bit deeper, actually, how do we then start to design your show for you, which makes it a much more effective use of their time from a visitor, but also as an exhibitor, you'll get your I guess bang for your buck. The amount of people that are going to come on your stand, they're going to be the right people because we're going to help them with that discovery. So yeah, that listening extends right down to that kind of, I guess, micro data level, but then also the bigger trends that if we suddenly start to hear this isn't the right time for the show, then we'll yeah, certainly make big decisions if we need to, like we did in December where we had to suddenly move the show, and moving something like that is always going to have quite a big cost impact.
Yeah.
But that's okay if it's the right thing.
So you're not just gathering data for its sake; you're actually responding to it as well. That's
and I love it. I mean, I'm slightly addicted and obsessed with looking at data, not to the point that I don't forget everyone's a human, but I just think it just the insight it gives you, and especially at a scaled event like ICE, that there's just really small things. Like just having I had a conversation with an operator, and his biggest challenge is just finding his way around. It's a huge show, and he has a certain types of companies he wants to visit, and actually he doesn't want to walk up and down, up and down, up and down. He wants to know, like, these are the companies he should go to, and could we just draw a line and maybe even introduce him to the exhibitors that he should meet? And actually something so simple that isn't actually technically that difficult would make a huge difference to his show. So I think, yeah, small things like that is where we can really deliver, I think, an upside on people's experience.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, we've not had the chance to actually see ICE for 2 years and that implementation of that data. So, yeah, looking forward to that kind of a new experience. So, I kind of wanted to wrap up by just asking you both, how confident are you in the success of ICE London on April 12th to 14th?
Shall I go? I'll go first because I'm like the eternal optimist. Not an idiot optimist, but definitely an optimist. And I really am confident with the current data we have on the market and what they're telling us, the current exhibitors that we have in the show, that it will go ahead. I think for me, it's all about the market now. Although, and I totally empathise that everyone's in a different situation with COVID right now.
Yeah.
A lot of people are just peaking with Omicron. We're coming out the other side, so I can see where the majority of where our customers come from in April. I don't think, touch wood, COVID will be a big issue for us. I don't think that's going to be the factor that makes ICE not happen. I think it's going to be does the market want it to happen?
Okay.
And right now the market's saying it won't. So yeah, if I had a little sign, I'd hold it up and it would say yes.
Okay. And yourself, Stuart?
I'll hold the same sign up, Alex. I agree with Alex's sentiments. I think, look, thankfully, the improving COVID picture in the UK over the last week or so has been great to see. We know case rates are dropping, restrictions have been removed now, so we are in the opportune moment really to welcome visitors, to international visitors and domestic visitors to ICE in April. So okay. I think the support we've had so far has been great. Like I said a few times, we recognise the challenges for a few, and we are sensitive to that. But thankfully, we've got that support. We've got all the indications that everyone wants ICE to happen, and the conditions here in the UK are improving. We expect and hope they'll improve, and all the destination companies of our attendees over the next few weeks as well. So everything's gearing up, and all our investment and energy we put into ICE, we're not hiding any of that back really. Everything's going full force. So yeah, we're excited. I think we're in a strong position considering the turbulent 6 weeks we've all just been through. So.
Okay.
What about you, Lewis? How confident are you?
In terms of the actual show taking place, we're fully behind you guys to ensure that you deliver the best experience that we've not had for 2 years. The idea of it going on for a third year without a show is kind of extreme. I mean, I think the thing that ICE has always done has been a bellwether for the marketplace, and not being able to take that temperature of the business with all the external factors that there are. COVID has introduced a whole bunch of variables. The show not taking place because of it. Brexit as well. In terms of how well the show. You guys coming on board and being a new team running the show. That moving to different dates. I mean, I'm looking forward to it being warm when I come to the show in London as well. Having some external outside events in the evening will be great. So no, I'm looking forward to the show, and best of luck actually pulling it all together. I know it has to have been a logistic nightmare to have actually moved the show even same location but by several months, and then to get everybody on board with the problems that are around the Easter dates. No, very supportive to make sure that the show is the best it can be and is a success as well. So good luck with that.
Thanks, Lewis.
Thank you so much for giving us the platform to speak to the market. And as I say, I won't read out my email and phone number, but you can find both of us on LinkedIn. If people have got thoughts or other questions, please don't hesitate in reaching out.
Accessible, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you will be contacted after this and throughout up until the dates of the show. But no, look forward to actually meeting you both in person for the first time in April. And
I'm imagining you're really tall.
Nothing. Yeah. We'll all find out when we actually get to the show. So to you both, really appreciate you both jumping on the call. As I said, this is a hot topic at the minute, so I look forward to the response that we get back from it as well. So cheers. Thank you. Thanks Stuart. Thanks Alex as well.
Thanks, Lewis.
Thank you.